Hi everybody and welcome to Heel Heat. My name is George Coles, and on this episode we're doing Who Was Better. The topic for this Who Was Better: two former teammates, two good friends, two stalwarts of both TNA wrestling and early AEW. That's Christopher Daniels and Frankie Kazarian, aka The Addiction, aka Bad Influence, aka 2/3 of SCU. And before we get into this, I want to kick it to Promotion George. Promotion George is going to tell you about a little something that I think you'll be interested in. Thanks, George. Nevermore the Raven Effect is a documentary film about the professional wrestler Raven. The film explores his tortured genius, pain, and brilliance, influenced the extreme wrestling scene of the 1990s, particularly in ECW. It features interviews with Raven himself and other wrestling legends like Chris Jericho and Tommy Dreamer, along with ECW standouts like The Sandman and musical geniuses like Billy Corgan, chronicling the chaotic and brutal era of wrestling and its physical and emotional toll on those involved. You get a chance to see behind the scenes on one of the most compelling and interesting characters and minds in the history of pro wrestling. I highly recommend you watch this movie. It's being brought to us by Night School Films and the acclaimed documentary director Jordy Day. This promises to be one of the quintessential documentaries of pro wrestling, and definitely one of the quintessential characters in pro wrestling. One of the guys who made an indelible mark on the sport, doesn't quite get the credit he deserves, but maybe now we could see behind the mirror, behind the magic, Raven. Definitely check this out. November 18th, Nevermore the Raven Effect, Amazon Prime, Google Play, Apple TV, and Vudu. Now back to George. Thanks, George. If you haven't seen my Who Was Better videos previously, basically we grade everything on a 1 to 5 scale in 8 different categories. We tally up the points. Whoever has the most points at the end wins. There is a chance for 5 bonus points. We'll talk about that when we get there. Let's get it started. Our first category, technical wrestling. Now for technical wrestling, I'm giving Christopher Daniels a 5. This man is the example of what a ring general is. No offense to Gunther, no shade to him, but this guy is exactly what you want. He's basically a multi-tool. He could do anything and everything in the wrestling ring. That's why he gets a 5. Now for Kaz is going to get a 4. Kaz, I think, is very good and he's up there. I just don't think that he breaks that upper echelon. That echelon where guys like Daniels would be, or Bryan Danielson. But I do think he's very good. He's in that, I guess, secondary tier. A B+ player, if you would say. And I don't mean that as a knock on him. Kaz is awesome. But he's right there, just not quite as good. For striking, I'm giving both guys a 5. And basically how I grade people on striking is their believability in their strikes, the impact of their strikes, and both of these guys have very believable, very impactful strikes. That's why they both get a 5. Next category, how they perform as a heel. This is another category where I'm giving both guys a 5. I think they're great heels, especially when they were Bad Influence in TNA. They kind of morphed out of that by the time they became SCU and The Addiction in Ring of Honor and AEW, but I think they did some very, very good heel work, especially in TNA. One of the top heel talents in that generation, in that time frame. Gotta love it. That's why they both get a 5. Now for face, how they perform as a face. For Daniels, I'm giving Daniels a 3. I'm not saying that he's a bad baby face. I'm not saying that he's someone that you even would cheer for as a baby face and want to win championships or win matches. The problem I've always had with someone like Daniels, and it kind of goes with someone like Randy Orton as well, is when they're faces, you're waiting for the heel turn for them to turn back heel. And that's kind of why I think he's pretty much a middle of the ground babyface. While you might want to cheer for him, while you might love him, you love him more as a heel. So you're always waiting for that turn, waiting for him to do something diabolical. That's why he gets a 3. Now for Kaz gets a 4. Frankie Kazarian is one of those guys that's a flippy wrestler or a highlight film wrestler, as some of the older folks would say. And he's kind of got that natural charisma that makes you want to cheer for him. Someone like him, like a Javon Evans now, or Rey Mysterio, or anybody that was a proponent of a new, more exciting style, you've always wanted to cheer for them, no matter what their persona was like. So he kind of gets the rub here because of that. Next up, promo ability. For Daniels, I'm giving Daniels a 4. While I do think he was very good, I think, again, it's one of those things like Kazarian where he didn't quite crash into that upper level. He's not on the level of contemporaries like Samoa Joe, CM Punk, other guys of the era like John Cena even, but he's very good, and he's good enough that he should have been a main eventer. That's something I'll talk about at the end here. And he should have been someone that was considered for the World Championship in TNA. I think one of TNA's biggest mistakes was never putting the world title on Daniels, because I think he could have carried it, and I think the fans would have loved him. But like I said, he just doesn't reach that upper level. Now for Kazarian's getting a 3. I would say he's a step below Daniels, and to be very blunt about it, he's very average when it comes to promos. And again, I'm not knocking Kaz. I like Kaz's work. There's a reason why I make this video, because these are two guys that I enjoy and two guys that I think measure up well against each other. So for that, like I said, Kaz is just about average. He gets a 3. Next up, presentation. For Daniels, I'm giving Daniels a 4, whether it be the robe with the Ankh in the middle or his general's jacket later in his career. He had awesome entrance gear. Now, the thing that I think sets him apart, where he doesn't get a 5, is his actual wrestling gear wasn't that inspired. Yes, it had his logo on it. Yes, it was cool, but how many of the X Division wrestlers had very similar trunks and very similar gear once you got in the ring? For that, I'm giving him a 4. For Kazarian, he's getting a 3. What I just mentioned, you could kind of cut and paste into Kazarian. Kazarian had a look that if you put his gear on any of the other X Division of his time, Chris Sabin, Alex Shelley, Jay Lethal, Matt Bentley, any of those guys, and unless it's say Kazarian specifically, it wouldn't shock you for them to wear it. Kind of very generic. That's why he gets a 3 here. Now going to our next category, charisma. For charisma, they're both getting a 4. I think they're both really good. I think they both can draw you in. I don't necessarily put them in that top tier. Again, I put them as a 4, basically like a B+. But I think they have enough charisma that they bring the fans to them. Combine that with their wrestling skill, and you have a great package. Now, last but not least, big game performance. For both of these guys, they're both getting a 5. You'd be hard-pressed to find a bad Christopher Daniels or a bad Frankie Kazarian match anywhere in their career. I'm sure maybe if you go to early UPW or California indie stuff, you may find something bad there. But from the time they jumped onto the world stage, whether it be in TNA or Daniels doing some work for WWE and WCW and even ECW before it folded. By the time these guys were on the world stage and everybody had eyes on them, their in-ring work was flawless. In my opinion, these are two of the guys that made that X Division what it was and how special it was. Guys like them, guys like Jerry Lynn, Low Key, The Amazing Red, Matt Bentley, Michael Shane, aka the legendary Jerry Lynn, Samoa Joe, the list goes on and on and on. But these are the guys that really made something different in TNA and made TNA something for the wrestling fans that gave them a different view. I think they were awesome when you put them in the big games, the biggest events, whether it be a main event, a world title match, whatever it may be. They both shined. They both gave you their best. That's why they both get a 5. Now, totaling everything up, for Christopher Daniels, he gets a total of 35. For Frankie Kazarian, he gets a 33. But wait, here's where the bonus comes in. Every Wednesday I post a poll on my posts page here on YouTube, basically asking you guys, who do you think was better of the two? And you get to pick between the two wrestlers. With that being said, the results of the poll are in. Christopher Daniels won, giving him a bonus 5 points, bringing his total up to 40, to Kaz's 33. Obviously, Christopher Daniels is a winner overall. And I want to jump on the soapbox just a little bit here. I kind of mentioned it during the breakdown a little bit. But how is it that Christopher Daniels was never a TNA World Champion? He had epic feuds with AJ, with Kazarian, with everybody on that roster that you put him in the ring with. He was one of their top talents, and he felt like a guy that they really didn't give a shit about. They let him go a few times, he would come and he would leave, but he was always one of their better talents. I don't know, it just doesn't make sense to me how he's not a multiple time, or at least one time, TNA World Champion. I did love the fact that Ring of Honor gave him a world title run, that was awesome, but he probably deserved that in TNA tenfold. Jumping off my soapbox here, your winner again, Christopher Daniels. Very deserving. One of the most underrated wrestlers of all time. A guy I think is going to kind of be forgotten by history, but absolutely shouldn't be. But in my opinion, just an amazing talent. With all that being said, my name is George Coles, and you've been watching Who Was Better.